Tatshrinu
Adidevam Atajatmam Adibhodamiti Prabhu Ataigam Purusam Viryam Srila Vidyata Tachinu
Adidevam, the controlling living entities. Acha, now. Adyatman, the controlling, the controlled entities. Adibhutam, the material bodies. Iti, thus. Prabhu, the Lord. Ata, in this way. Ekam, one only. Purusham, of his lordship. Viryam, potency. Tridha, in three. Abhidyata, divided. Tat, that. Shrinu, just hear from me. Translation, just hear from me how the potency of his lordship divides one into three, called the controlling entities, the controlled entities, and the material bodies, in the manner mentioned above. So there's no purport to this, so we'll move on to sloka number 15. Anta sarira rakashat purushasya vichestasta ojasaho balam jagya tattam prano mahanusu. From the sky situated within the transcendental body of the manifesting Mahavishnu, sense energy, mental force and bodily strength are all generated, as well as the sum total of the fountainhead of the total living force. Poetic. Text 16. Anupranantijam prana pranantam sarvajantasu apantantam apananti naradevamivanuga. As the followers of the king follow their Lord, similarly, when the total energy is in motion, all other living entities move, and when the total energy stops endeavouring, all other living entities stop sensual activities. So there's a purport by Srila Prabhupada to this verse. The individual living entities are completely dependent on the total energy of the Supreme Purush. No one has independent existence, just as no electric lamp has independent effulgence. Each and every electrical instrument depends fully on the total powerhouse. The total powerhouse depends on the reservoir of water for generating electricity. Water depends on the clouds. The clouds depend on the sun. And the sun depends on the creation. And the creation depends on the movement of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Thus, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the cause of all causes. Agyanat timirandasya jananjanat salakaya chaksuram militam yena tasmai shri gurave namaha durgame pati mendasya skalapati gurchimahu shvakripa yushtu danena santusantuvalam. So we have three verses here. We continue on. The chapter is entitled Bhagavatam is the answer to all questions. So the questions are being posed here by, just lost the thread. Who's posing the questions again? Maharaj Pariksit is posing the questions, Sukadev Goswami. So they are talking about the creation and how cosmic manifestation is working. In fact, this text number 14 is very similar to the one that we discussed a week or two ago. I'll just read it out to you because it's begins, as you can see, Adi Devam. Do you remember what that is? Devas, the demigods, right? And then the next one is Adi Atman. What's that? That's Atman means the mind, the soul. And Adi Bhutam, so the living entities. So we have that triple, Adi Devik, Adi Atmik and Adi Baltic. So that is often bandied about in Krishna consciousness. So in text number 8 also, where were we? Yo Jatmiko Yam Purusha Sosa Vivadevika. So there's Jatmiko and Devika. Yastatro Bhayavicheta Purushohi Abotika. So we have that again, Adi Baltics, Adi Devika, Adi Atmiks. And the translation of this is a really spectacular translation. The individual person possessing different instruments of senses is called the Adhyatmic person, and the individual controlling deity of the senses is called Adidevik, and the embodiment seen on the eyeballs is called the Adibaltic person. So in short, so we have the Adidevik, so that's a living entity in the material universe, and the Devas, they're the controllers. So we know that there's 33 million Devas in this universe, help them control the planet. And who are they controlling? The Adhyatmics. So we're the living entities, we're the Adhyatmics, so we're getting controlled by all the different forces that are there. But when the Atmic actually comes into contact with his body and he begins to think that he's his body, and he becomes Adibaltic. So the Adibaltic, there's 8,400,000 species of Adibaltics. So they're in all the different bodies. So the living entity comes into contact with all these different species. Not all of them. They're not all here on the material universe, but with different species that are here, all the living entities. So that's the driving force of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that he is the controller of all this. So this is being stated here, enunciated very, very clearly. So by the will of the Lord, the living entity, he's placed in this universe, and then with that, as the Lord being the supreme controller, he energizes the living entity. But it's always said, the Upanishad very, very clearly states, that it's very, very factual, that in the first aphorism, Isavasya Saramidam Yatkincha Jagacham Jagat, that everything animate and inanimate is controlled by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. No question of that. The Lord is in control. Okay? So that's a very poignant fact that is being explained here in the Bhagavatam. By the will of the Lord and the interaction of time and the three modes of material nature, then it says in the next sloka, in text 15, that Mahavishnu, within the body, translated body Mahavishnu, sense energy, mental force, bodily strength all generated, as well as the sum total of the fountainhead of the total living force. That's the living entity. He is cast into this material universe, swimming about in the three modes of material nature and being subject to the generation of time. And what actually happens, well, the Supreme Lord is watching all this, and he's generating, it's like the seed-giving Father has generated this, but one very clear point is made again. This is very forceful in Bhagavad Gita 7:12. It says, Ya chaiva satvik bhava rajasas tamasaschaye mata evititam vidi no tvaham teshatemai. I used to know this off by heart when I was a brahmachari. I used to know the whole 7th chapter. Sort of snippets of it come back. All states of being, be they goodness, passion and ignorance, like in the three modes, they are coming on the source of all these states of beings. By my energy, I am, in a sense, everything. but I'm independent. I'm not under the modes. So the Lord is not under the influence of these modes of material nature which are happening. He's totally separate. So Srila Prabhupada is giving this example here, which goes right to the source. It goes to the electric lamp, right? We all switch on the lights. So we don't think about it most of the time, but then there's light. It has to have a light source. So then what is that light source? Well, it's the factory, powerhouse, right? That sort of goes back, there's some sort of source there. Where do they get their source from? Water or something, nuclear energy. Anyway, coal. Yeah, so anyway, this is all going, this is coming, okay, we'll go with water and we'll go with coal, but this is all coming from, where are we? I'm at 16, I'll flip this over so we'll follow the progress here. Water, and it depends on clouds. You need the clouds for your water, and then the clouds, of course, come from the sea. The sun heats the sea, and then the water vaporizes from the sea and forms clouds, and then the sun is the creation of the clouds. So of course the sun is moving in a fixed orbit according to the will of the Supreme. So you can trace this electricity that we have, this switch that we put on, we can trace it back to Krishna as being the fountainhead of all this creation. Of course, according to our desires, we can choose how we want to use this electricity. This is the independence that we have. So we turn the electricity on. What do? Well, we're here, sitting here, reading the Bhagavatam. But on the other hand, we can turn the electricity on to read other materials, like the sports page, or the fashion page, or what celebrities are doing. So many other different things. So we can utilize Krishna's energy in so many different ways as we wish. So, but this is the interaction. So we interact. Someone wrote the sports page. So we're actually interacting with other Adi-Bhautics, right? So our Adhyatmic is interacting with the other Adi-Bhautics. Or if we reading Srimad Bhagavatam and we do the worship, and then we try to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Adi-Devics become pleased. So more or less there's less interaction with the Adi-Devic, the demigods, who are actually agents of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So in the next sloka, I've just quoted 712, Chaiva Satvika Bhava, that all states of being, whether their goodness, passion, ignorance are coming from me, but not in them. And in the next sloka, the Lord says, Tribi gunare bhave evi sarvam idam jagat mohitam na vijanati mam ebhya param avyayam. And he's saying that the world knows me not, because they're deluded by the three modes of material nature. So the people just become totally infatuated with the goodness, passion, and ignorance, and they forget this Lord, the Lord is actually the source behind everything. And the Lord, he says, but they're deluded and they don't know the fact that I'm inexhaustible and I'm infallible. So despite the fact that they've forgotten me, it's sort of like a really common occurrence to say that God's forgotten us, God doesn't exist, he's far away. But actually God is there, he's still there. So when the civilization gets to this stage, the Atmic, the Adi-Bhautic, the Adi-Devic forces are reversed. They're meant, the demigods, the Adi-Devic, is meant to guide the Adi-Atmics back to that place where they can go back to the spiritual world, because this material world is just a temporary manifestation of their material desires. And so instead of going upwards, they become infatuated with the three modes, they go downwards, and then the Adi-Atmics, the Adi-Bhautics, and the Adi-Devic forces, they become miseries. So more often than not in Krishna consciousness we will say, what are the miseries of material life? Adi-Atmic, Adi-Bhautic, Adi-Devic, right? Because we're totally become subjugated by the influence of the modes of material nature. Now, in the 4th canto, we move along a few cantos. There's a very, very good example of this, where this point is brought up again by Sukadeva Goswami, the point of creation and the power of the Lord. And it's brought up in the story of Dhruva Maharaj. Just do a sort of quick survey here. When I say Dhruva Maharaj, who doesn't know anything about Dhruva Maharaj? Please put up your hand. Thank you. We have 2 brave souls who've said maybe some more. So Dhruva Maharaj is a very, very epic, saintly Raja Rishi in our study of the Shastras, that he was a great king at one point in time, but he was a very proud little boy at the age of 5. This is where he came into prominence, when he wasn't allowed to sit on the lap of his father. And he had really great genealogy because he was the grandson of Manu. It goes back that Manu had a daughter who married Daksha, who gave birth to King Uttanapad, and that is the very king. And Uttanapad had 2 wives. Who can tell me the wives? Suruchi and Suniti. Suruchi and Suniti. So Dhruva was the son of Suniti, and Suruchi was the favourite wife. So when Dhruva, and she had a son, and Suniti had a son. She had Dhruva, and Suruchi had Uttama. And she said, "How dare you try and sit on the lap of your father there? Why, my boy is the favourite there, and you have to actually ask my permission to be able to sit on his lap." And the king, he didn't actually say anything. And she said, if you are so lucky in your next life, you may take birth in my womb, then you'll be able to sit on your father's lap. Like that. And Dhruva he's a Kshatriya spirit. So he became really enraged. How dare this? And he was crying, hot tears, right? Hot or cold tears, or hot tears, right? And his mother tried to console him. That's okay, be patient. Everything will. Your father loves you. But he said, "That's it. I'm done. 5 years old. I'm going to have a kingdom greater than my father's." So he walked out of the palace. 5 years old, just walked out into the forest, and he's sort of going to meditate until. So Narad Muni by chance just happened to be strolling past. He goes, "You're a 5-year-old boy, what are you doing here? What are you trying to do?" And he said, "Well, I've been insulted, I'm the king's son, I'm trying to actually have a kingdom greater than my father's." And he couldn't dissuade him from that. He just said, that's not really a sort of thing that a 5-year-old boy should be wanting. But he still was so fixed that Narad Muni gave him the process. So he began his meditations, severe meditations for 3 months, I think. He ate, I'm just trying to skip through this story. This is not the story I'm trying to tell, but just to fill you in. 3 months he just ate leaves that were around in the forest. And then after that, next 3 months he gave up eating leaves and he just sipped some water. And then after 3 months he was so fixed in his meditation on the Lord that he stopped drinking water and he just lived off air. And his meditation was so powerful that this sort of heat began to emanate from him. And by his potency, Lord Vishnu actually came and said, "What do you want, my dear boy?" And actually Lord Vishnu, being Supreme Personality of Godhead, was effulgently beautiful beyond the concept of whatever Dhruva was thinking about. And Dhruva was just so absolutely taken by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He said, "Forget what I wanted, I was only wanting pieces of broken glass. This is the thing. Why compared to what I've seen?" But still, nevertheless, by his potency, he saw the Lord, but the Lord still gave him these benedictions. He said, "Okay, that you are going to be more powerful than your father." In fact, Dhruva is now residing on the pole star many, many millions of years ago, but he's still there in this universe. But then when he came back to the palace, he'd been gone for 9 months. They thought he was dead, and they even his stepmother who insulted him, she greeted him with warm affection. And in due course of time, it did happen that the king went to the forest, gave up his kingdom, and Dhruva was put in charge. So this is where my story starts now. We'll talk about some lessons on the creation. So Dhruva was the king, and his brother decided to go hunting in the Himalayas. And while he was hunting in the Himalayas, he came across a tribe of higher celestial, you can say they're celestial beings. They're in the sort of upper strata, but they're not like the demigods, like the Apsaras or the Kinnaras or Kingdom of Heaven. They were called the Yakshas. Yeah, they were the Yakshas. So they're sort of like almost like ghostly personalities, but they lived in a very, very beautiful city called Amara. I think it was called, something like that. Anyway, something like that. In fact, just early on, there's a bit of a squirrel here that one of the Pandavas, Biba, he happened to go there. You know why he went there? Just a bit of a quiz question here, just to keep everybody half alive. Picked the Parijata flower. I think Draupadi was just there. They were in the Himalayas, and this Parijata flower came wafting through the air. It was such a beautiful flower. She said, "Oh, I want more of this. I want the bush. I want the bush. Bhima, go and get the bush for me." So Bhima started looking, and he was climbing up and up and up the mountains, and he came to the planet of the Yakshas, and they were pretty belligerent. They said, you're a mortal, you can't come here. You know, what to speak of us giving you a flower. So he put pay to him. He gave him a good thumping, right? I don't know if he got the flower or not. I think he might have got the flower, took it back to Draupadi. So that was one encounter. So anyway, one of the Yakshas killed Uttama, Dhruva's brother. And that is a big offence to a king. Like Dhruva was king of the world, so he became pretty enraged at the fact that his brother had been killed by a Yaksha. So he decided to seek some retribution. So he went there with his chariot driver and his horses, and he parked outside the city of Amaratma, and he blew his conch loudly. And the Yakshas couldn't stand it. It's just like a bit of an example, like in the material world, this also happens that sometimes countries, they have what you call war games, right? That they go close to the border of some other country, and they fly their planes into a no-go zone very close to that country, and that country becomes, "How dare you fly your planes near my country?" So this way the Yakshas come pouring out of the city. "How dare he blow his conch shell near our city? This is war." So they took him on. 130,000 Yakshas come flying at Dhruva Maharaj, throwing javelins and spears and maces and firing 3 arrows. Anyway, Dhruva started fighting with them, and he was using 3 arrows at a time to pierce them. So they became so mad that they used 6 arrows, and Dhruva was actually covered in a cloud of maces, arrows, clubs, spears, flaming torches. They were just like the demigods were going, "Alas, alas, Dhruva's all covered over. What's going to happen?" And then he emerged out of this, and then he started putting paid to them all, and then they all retreated back to their city. So he was there, and he was contemplating, "Oh, this is a very, very nice city. I am the king of I'm the king of the world. Maybe I should go to this city." But he didn't trust the Yakshas because they're very, very belligerent. All of a sudden, all these mystical weapons started to come at him. And this is also delineated in the Srimad Bhagavatam, in the war between the demigods and the demons. Very graphic description of torsos, blood, mucus, pus, bones, dead bodies, fiery serpents slithering down, all coming to attack Dhruva. And then he saw devastating waves of an ocean coming towards him, coming to obliterate him. So then once again he was covered by this illusory energy of the yakshas. This is a mystical weapon that they have. The demons possess this weapon. It was actually used in Kurukshetra also. So then Dhruva had one arrow. He had the Narayan arrow. So he fixed the Narayan arrow to his bow, and it said as soon as he fixed that arrow to the bow, all these illusions were dispelled. And when he fired it, all these hundreds of arrows came out at once and just started to completely decimate the Yaksha army. And Dhruva was really mad at this point in time. In fact, it was getting to be, he was diabolically slaughtering the Yakshas. So at that point in time, his venerable grandfather Manu, he came and he stopped him. So as I said, Manu, he was the progenitor of mankind. We don't hear much of Manu in action in the Bhagavatam in particular, but this is one point in time where he physically appeared before Dhruva and he said, what are you doing? You've gone too far, because in your rage you're actually killing innocent people, and these people that you were killing are actually not the ones that perpetrated the crime of killing your brother. And then to actually explain things to him, he recounted the potency of the Lord, why he's here in the first place, and he began with the creation. This is documented in the 4th canto, 11th chapter, text 16. It begins with that. He said, by the Lord's potency, all these bodies are created, and male and female bodies, they're being created, and they generate all the different species of life. And this is by the mercy of the Lord's potencies that he is dictating this illusory energy, this material energy. He calls it illusory because this material energy is temporary. It's created, annihilated and destroyed, and this is by the potency of the Lord. And then once again, in this instruction to him, he said that the Lord is not influenced by these modes of material nature. He's impassionate. And he gave a very, very nice example of a potter. Like, has anybody ever made any pottery at all? Sometimes we did that at school, made some pots. So you have a potter and you have a wheel. So the potter gets the clay and he puts it together puts the clay together in a lump, and then he shapes it according to his wheel, and you get this very nice pottery which contains waters and everything like that. So then the end product is a nice pot, but the potter is not in it. It's just a product of the potter, right, that he made this pot. So this is the example that Srila Prabhupada uses here, that Krishna, he's like the potter, and the material energy is like the wheel, and this is the sum and substance total. So even though the pot is there used for so many other things, you forget about the creator, but still someone created the pot. So in that sense, Srila Prabhupada says that the Lord is the remote controller. I was actually fascinated by the word remote, because actually, think about it, where do we use remote? We're all remote controllers, haven't we? We control the temperature. Where's the remote? Walk into the living room. Where's the remote for the television? Click, turn it off because the kids are watching. They're like, you're in my click, right? And then we have remotes for drones. So many remotes, isn't there? So in this sense, we can understand that the Lord, in his own right, is the remote controller of everything. He doesn't have to be here. It's like we can control, we lock our car from 200 metres away, click. So this is the Lord, this is his potency. So everything is still moving by the will of the Lord. So the rains, by the will of the Lord, it said also that the rains come and the weeds fall on fertile ground. And the rains come and fall on the ground. So by the mercy of the Lord. So if the ground is right, if the ground is nothing in the ground, you get weeds. But then if you've got nice rains that fall on seeds, and you get beautiful flowers and fruits and veggies, and it all depends on the state of the consciousness of the person who is actually living on the ground there. So but the Lord is making the rain fall, whether the seeds are in the ground or not. So it's said that it's neutral. So everyone is under the jurisdiction of the Lord, under the time element, and everyone suffers or enjoys according to their own destiny. So if you plant lots of nice seeds for food in the ground, you'll get to eat. If you don't do anything, you won't eat. So in this way, karma is moving. So Prabhupada also explains that it's like the wind is blowing, right, and small particles of the air are just sort of being distributed all around. So this is our karmic reactions. So karma is very intricate. So Manu has tried to explain to Dhruva that we don't know what the Lord's plan. Sometimes we see the immediate effect, just like we saw the rage. Oh, my brother has been killed, or someone's done this to me. Immediately you want to effect what you actually see in your situation. But that can be just one situation. But there are maybe more extenuating situations, just like we have that story of, we have that saying, there's two sides to every story, right? Or there might be a bigger picture that we don't see. So Dhruva Maharaj, we can see the reaction of the yakshas, that he blew the conch and they come out, come on, let's fight, how dare you blow the conch like that. And then also Dhruva, he was saying, well, I've come here to avenge my brother, but Manu was saying, hey, you've gone further than that. You've actually avenged your brother, because the person who killed your brother was probably in front of the army or whatever. Now you're killing the rest of the army who had nothing to do with the effect that your brother got killed. So you've crossed over into the modes of material nature. You're Rajavidya, you're beyond the modes, you're transcendent, you're actually a great saint. But because of your fiery temper, you have become influenced by the modes of material nature. So it is time for you to pull back. So then Dhruva understood that, and he said, besides, you have your situation which you perceive, but then there is another situation of Uttama, your brother, that he was destined to be. There is a destiny there, because everything is the world, it's the Lord's plan, the cause and effect. That Uttama went there and he was killed by the yaksha. That also was karma. That was also his destiny. So karma is very, very, very intricate. So for us, it's very complicated to understand. So the best thing that can be said is that we try to avoid karma altogether. So we try and stay on the Brahma Buddha platform, on that transcendental platform, which is beyond karma. So this is a discussion that we're having about the energy of the Lord. What is the spiritual energy of the Lord? How do we actually immerse ourselves in that energy? And of course we understand that this energy is coming from Lord Vishnu, and in this context here, and by understanding what the process is, then we get elevated to the spiritual world, in this case the Vaikuntha planets, which is run by Narayan, who's a manifestation of Lord Vishnu, or vice versa. Sometimes people try to understand the difference between Narayan and Lord Vishnu. Well, Lord Vishnu is in the material world, Lord Narayan's in the spiritual world. So when the living entity comes to the material world, he's under the jurisdiction of Lord Vishnu. When he gets liberated, he goes to Narayan planets in Vaikuntha. So this is all very nice. I've got 10 minutes to explain. So where does Krishna fit into this? So we have, this is the culture that we have. I was having a discussion, I saw Abhijit somewhere here, we're having the discussion. He asked a very, very relevant question, that my descendants, my parents, they're Hindus, and that is the religion that the family for so many generations is adhered to. And according to the Hindu tradition, that Lord Narayan is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Vishnu is in charge of material creation, and Krishna is the 8th incarnation of Lord Vishnu. So how is it that, Krishna is getting all the prominence in the Vaishnava traditions? That is a question that is commonly asked, is it not? is it? Yes. So then it's explained that, well, Lord Krishna is the 8th incarnation of Lord Vishnu, so what is his functions? It's a little bit, people, because they're very much influenced by the 3 modes, have difficulty understanding Krishna's childhood pastimes. But then they can understand from the Bhagavad Gita when Lord Krishna says, Paritranaya sadadam vidasya chatusritam dharma samstapaye dharma stapaye sambhavami yuga yuga, that in order to annihilate the miscreants and re-establish religious principles, I come down to establish religious principles. So this is the Bhagavad Gita. So Krishna spoke the Bhagavad Gita, so we understand this, that actually Krishna is giving the religious principles by which we can go back to Godhead. So they understand this about the Lord. But what they find difficulty in explaining, it's just like in the 13th sloka I was saying, that deluded by the 3 modes of material nature, the world knows me not. But in Brahma Samhita, the very first aphorism, it says, Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchidananda Vigraha Anadir Govinda Sarva Karana Karanam. Govinda, Krishna, he's the cause of all causes. So that sort of throws a bit of a bit of chaos into the mix. It's all very logical, Lord Vishnu, the different incarnation, but hang on, someone's saying, Lord Brahma's saying that Krishna is the supreme controller. So how is this? So of course it's said, Lord Brahma explains Brahma Samhita later on, Premanjana Churito Bhakti Velochayena Sankasadevi, you have to have the eyes to see him. So we just see that, like in Vrindavan, when Krishna comes, and we're very, very fortunate to have Krishna coming, because he only comes once in every day of Lord Brahma. And the day of Lord Brahma is a very, very long time. 8,642,000,000 years. That's it. And he came 5,000 years ago. We're very, very close. So when Lord Krishna comes, there he is. He's a baby. He's a beautiful baby there. Mother Yasoda. He's got his mother running around, and he's doing all these naughty things like breaking pots of yogurt and feeding it to the monkeys and whatever. And there's a beautiful story about the fruit seller, that she was going around Vrindavan, who wants to buy fruit, who wants to buy fruit? Well, Krishna could just barely walk, he was a toddler, right? He heard that, he goes, I want some fruit, I want some fruit. So he puts his hand in a jar of rice and gets all his rice grains. He's going to buy some fruit with his rice grains, and he's running towards the fruit seller, and all the rice grains are falling out of his hand. So by the time he gets there, he's only got a couple of grains left. But that lady, the fruit seller, was just so bedazzled by Krishna's beauty that she completely forgot herself, and immediately she just gave him as much fruit as she could carry, emptied the whole basket and gave him the basket, and just looking after him. And that image that she had stood with her for the rest of her life. In fact, that after she left that particular place, she went and lived on the banks of the rivers and just chanted Krishna's name. Of course, when she was crossing the river, or when she got to the other side of the bank, she looked in the basket and it was full of jewels. So this is Krishna's potency, that this is one of his potencies, beauty. And his beauty is so enchanting that it is a reciprocal relationship between the devotees, that the devotees become completely mesmerized, whether they're on that level of seeing Krishna as their child, like Mother Yasoda and all the other elderly gopas, or the gopas who are playing with Krishna. They're just infatuated by his beauty, and this is one of Krishna's attributes, or the gopis. So each one has that relationship which is totally mesmerizing with the Supreme Lord. And then, of course, he has the other qualities, that he performs these fantastic pastimes, that he defeats the demigods. He bewilders Lord Brahma. He defeats Indra. And they're just incredible pastimes that cannot be repeated by any of his other incarnations. And on top of that, he has so many loving devotees who just want to reciprocate him in this mood, like in the mood of Vaikuntha. There's all that awe and reverence. That's basically the relationship that the living entities have, that God is great. We see that God is the powerful, most powerful there, and there he is in his form as Lord Vishnu. So you always give credit to a powerful person. You don't come up and embrace a powerful person. First of all, you give the credit to him. If they embrace you, they're all well and good, but you don't go near them in that manner. So that's Krishna's pastimes, the third one. And the fourth one, what's the fourth one that is totally outstanding? Oh, you answered too many questions. You're not allowed to answer anymore. Anyone else? Someone? No one? He's flute playing. Maybe. Krishna plays this amazing flute. There he is with his flute there on the altars. You can see there's different types of flutes. I forget the names of the flutes. Can anyone quickly? Huh? Venu. Vamsi. There's short ones and long ones. But when he starts playing the flute, people become stunned. All the living entities become stunned and they can't move. And then the gopis immediately start going towards the sound of that flute. They forget their clothes, they forget how they were dressed. And the cows, he plays another different note on his flute, the cows become stunned, the birds they fall out of the sky, the rocks, they melt, river go backwards. This is supposedly Krishna's flute. So he's got all these four qualities, right? So this is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So he explains in Bhagavad Gita, Jama Karma Chama Divyam Evam Yo Vedi Tatvata, that one who actually understands the nature of my pastimes, transcendental activities on this planet, does not have to take birth again in this material world, but attains to my eternal abode. So that is the wonderful promise that Krishna has given us. So we have two energies here. We have the Mahamaya and the Yogamaya. So the Mahamaya energy is this material world where we relate to each other on the bodily platform and we act accordingly to the modes, and we have our relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead by the mercy of the spiritual master. We understand the transcendental nature of the Lord, but we work towards that. Because we work towards that Mahamaya. Mahamaya is actually the yoga is work. Mahamaya is material energy. Yoga Maya, we're working towards that spiritual energy of the Lord, whereby when we're in a state of Yoga Maya, we forget that Krishna is the creator of everything, that he's the cause of all causes, he's supreme, all the inexhaustible, infallible, creates all this material, all that. Yeah, he's all that. But in our Yoga Maya, we just see our loving relationship with him, and we're infatuated with the fact that we're his eternal associates, and it is our nature just to actually serve Krishna, and by that service Krishna becomes happy and reciprocates. That's all we care about. We don't care about anything else. That is the mercy of the Guru and the cyclic succession and the progress of the Srimad Bhagavatam, that it is coming to this. But to come to that platform, first of all, we have to understand what Krishna's attributes are, that he is the cause of all causes and all there is, and it's very scientific. Thank you very much. So, does anybody have any questions or comments? All good? Yes?
Just so I got it clear, so you were saying, in the initial stage it's sort of neutral, but because we're sort of in the material energy, subject to it, they become negative.
In the beginning, the plan was, according to my understanding about 6 slokas ago, the planning was that they're the creation of the Lord, that the demigods are here for our benefit, and then it goes back to the Bhagavad Gita that in the beginning there was the demigods and there was sacrifice to Vishnu, and performance of the sacrifice to Vishnu, they become happy, they give you all the necessary ingredients for worship, and you can perform your worship of the Lord and live very, very happily, and we all go back to Godhead. So there's all this cooperation. So therefore there was a cooperation between all the living entities according to the Shastras. So the Adhyatmic, Adhibhautik, they were guides back to going to the spiritual world. But then when we misidentify and we just, instead of serving the Lord, we start serving the material energy in our own sense gratification, then they turn on you and they become your enemies. Just like the saying is that your mind can become your best friend or your worst enemy. Like that. So that's just another extension to that. Amazing, isn't it? Jai, all glory, Srila Prabhupada. Jai.